The marriage certificate slid beneath my hand just as every light in City Hall died. I had come to Black Harbor's municipal building for one reason: sign as the witness to my younger brother's contract marriage, then drag him home before our father discovered what he had done. Instead, I stood beside an empty chair while emergency lights painted the clerk's office a murky red. The air conditioning stopped with a metallic groan. Somewhere beyond the frosted glass doors, shoes scraped across marble and a man murmured into a radio. "Where is Noah?" I asked. My phone showed 3 unanswered calls, all made within the last 10 minutes. The clerk adjusted her glasses and searched the shadowed hallway. "The other groom hasn't arrived either. We're already past the appointment." "Then we wait." "We can't." A backup alarm chirped above us, sharp and repetitive. She pushed a cream-colored folder toward me. "The system will lock us out when emergency power fails. Your brother completed his portion electronically. If you're his authorized representative, sign the confirmation page now, and we can correct any clerical issue when both parties appear." I should have read every line. I always read every line. But Noah had begged me that morning not to let the arrangement collapse. The marriage would keep control of his trust out of our father's hands, and my signature was supposed to cost me nothing except an uncomfortable afternoon. I found the yellow tab through the red gloom. The paper felt unusually thick beneath my palm. "Here. Full legal name." I signed Elias Ward in black ink. The pen scratched loudly in the powerless room. The clerk stamped the first page, then the second. Each impact landed with the hard finality of a judge's gavel. The ceiling lights flashed back on before the ink had dried. White fluorescence flooded the desk, revealing 2 folders, Noah's blue file near the printer and the cream file beneath my hand. The clerk's face emptied. She lifted the page I had signed and examined the header. "Mr. Ward, what?" Her finger moved from my name to the blank meant for the second spouse. Noah's name appeared nowhere. I pulled the document toward me. At the top, in embossed municipal lettering, were the words certificate of marriage. Beneath them, the first party was listed as Elias Jonathan Ward. My pulse struck once against my throat. "That's wrong. I'm the witness. Not on this document." She opened the blue folder with trembling fingers. Its witness page was unsigned. These files were switched during the outage. I reached for the certificate, but she covered it with both hands. "Don't tear a government record. Void it." "I can't void a filed marriage unilaterally. Both spouses must request an annulment, or a judge must order one. There is no other spouse. He never came." The clerk looked toward the security camera, then at the signature field opposite mine. A neat black name was already there, entered and notarized before my arrival. Lucien Moretti. The name tugged at something I couldn't place, a headline glimpsed in passing, a conversation silenced when I entered the room. Before I could ask, the doors opened behind me. The scent of cold leather and cedar moved through the office first. Several pairs of polished shoes crossed the marble in perfect unison, then stopped. The clerk straightened so quickly her chair rolled into the wall. I turned, still holding the edge of the certificate, and saw dark suits filling the doorway around one silent man. His gaze dropped to my signature. Then it lifted to my face. The clerk swallowed audibly. "Mr. Moretti," she whispered, "there has been a mistake. Lock the doors." The command was quiet, but every guard moved at once. Brass bolts struck their housings with hard metallic clicks, sealing out the courthouse murmur. Under the fluorescent lights, Lucien Moretti crossed the room, carrying the cold scent of cedar and rain. I finally remembered where I had seen his name, beneath photographs of seized cargo ships, federal investigations, and witnesses who had suddenly forgotten how to speak. The clerk's fingers shook over her keyboard. I can void the registration request. No, Lucien stopped across the counter from me. A silver ring flashed on his hand as he turned the certificate toward the light. His face remained controlled, but his guards had positioned themselves between him and every window. Tell me exactly when this entered the municipal system. 8 minutes ago. The clerk swallowed. It transmitted automatically. One guard touched the receiver in his ear. His gaze sharpened. Sir, the convoy route has been breached. 2 vehicles entered the garage assigned to your departure. Lucien looked at my signature again. Then changed the convoy. Already done. The decoy left 90 seconds ago. A dull blast rolled through the glass from several blocks away. The window panes trembled. Dust whispered from the ceiling, and a car alarm began wailing in the street below. Lucien did not turn toward the sound. His attention stayed on me. Someone expected me to leave this building unmarried, he said. The clerk's monitor painted his features in pale blue. Our marriage became public the moment the registration cleared. My security protocol replaced the route, vehicle, and destination. My mouth had gone dry. You're saying this mistake saved your life? I'm saying whoever arranged that attack now knows you changed the outcome. I set the certificate down. Then annul it and explain that I had nothing to do with this. Lucien took out his phone and placed it beside my hand. A security image filled the screen. My face was framed by the courthouse entrance, a timestamp beneath it, and a red circle drawn around my head. The picture had been captured less than 3 minutes earlier. Explanation is no longer protection, he said. Cancellation would confirm you are disposable. And staying married makes me what? Valuable enough to keep alive. I hated the calm certainty in his voice. Beyond the locked doors, footsteps hurried across marble, then stopped when one of Lucien's guards raised a hand. The room smelled suddenly of hot wiring from the damaged lights. How long? I asked. Lucien's eyes narrowed, as if the question had changed his assessment of me. 7 days. Long enough to identify who knew my original route and why these documents were switched. After that, you sign the annulment. If you still want it. That isn't negotiable. Good. He reached for the certificate, but I caught the opposite edge. The paper pulled taut between us. For the first time, something shifted behind his expression, not warmth, but recognition that I would not be carried through this as baggage. No locked rooms, I said. No taking my phone. No threats against Noah. If your men touch my brother, 7 days becomes 7 minutes. Lucien released the page first. Agreed. He removed his coat and draped it over my shoulders before I could refuse. The wool was heavy and warm, carrying cedar, leather, and the faint bite of gun oil. Through the frosted glass, camera flashes erupted across the courthouse steps. Those photographers weren't here 10 minutes ago, I said. Neither were the men watching the east exit. Lucien offered his hand. This time, it was not ceremony. It was a route through a building where every doorway might conceal someone waiting for us. Stay beside me, he said. For the next 7 days, the safest thing you can be is my husband. Rain hissed beneath the tires as the armored sedan climbed through iron gates and entered the Moretti estate. Beyond the tinted glass, security lights swept across wet hedges, pale stone walls, and men stationed under black umbrellas. Elias counted 3 cameras before the car stopped beneath a covered entrance. Lucien stepped out first, scanning the colonnade while cold air carried the scent of rain and clipped cedar into the car. You said no locked rooms, Elias reminded him. Your room won't lock from the outside, Lucien said. The estate gates will. Inside, polished marble reflected amber chandeliers, and every footstep traveled through the cavernous foyer. A house attendant offered to take Elias's phone. Elias kept it. Lucien dismissed the man with one glance. That small enforcement of their agreement answered one question: Lucien's promises had authority here. It did not make the house feel less like a fortress. Before Elias could be shown upstairs, music drifted from behind a pair of walnut doors. Low strings. Crystal glasses. Dozens of measured voices. "You're hosting a party?" Elias asked. "A family council disguised as one," Lucien replied. Canceling would confirm the attack succeeded. Elias looked down at the borrowed coat still covering his courthouse clothes. "And what does walking in with me confirm?" "That nothing happened outside City Hall that I didn't permit." The ballroom smelled of expensive cologne, cigar smoke, and beeswax from hundreds of candles. Men in dark suits stood beneath gilded balconies while women wearing diamonds watched Elias over untouched champagne. Conversations thinned as Lucien entered. They did not stop because of courtesy. They stopped the way birds went silent when a predator crossed beneath them. Lucien kept 6 inches between them. Too formal for newlyweds. Too careful for intimacy. Elias noticed the calculation spreading from face to face. An older man with a silver tie pin approached, his smile narrow. 7 days ago, you rejected every marriage proposal placed before you, he told Lucien. Today, a ward appears from a municipal blackout wearing your coat. His gaze shifted to Elias's bare left hand. How fortunate. Another guest lifted his glass. Perhaps the happy husband can tell us where the ceremony took place. Lucien's jaw tightened. Answering would expose the accident. Refusing would confirm it. Across the room, a waiter touched 2 fingers to his cuff, and someone near the balcony answered with the same gesture. Elias felt the attention sharpen around them. He could let Lucien command the room, but that would leave him looking exactly like what they suspected, an unwilling stranger dragged behind a feared man. So Elias crossed the space between them. He took Lucien's hand in full view of the ballroom and threaded their fingers together. The leather of Lucien's glove was cool, beneath it, his hand went perfectly still. The ceremony was private, Elias said, meeting the older man's stare. The marriage is not. A camera shutter clicked from the balcony. Elias stepped closer and removed Lucien's coat from his shoulders, folding it over his own arm instead of returning it to an attendant. My husband dislikes explaining his decisions, he added. I dislike strangers questioning mine. Lucien turned toward him. For one suspended beat, candlelight caught the scar near his temple and the surprise he concealed from everyone else. Then his thumb pressed once against Elias's knuckles. The room shifted with that gesture. Glasses lowered. Smiles vanished. The silver-tied man retreated first. Lucien raised their joined hands just enough for every watcher to understand. My husband has spoken. The music resumed, louder than before, but the whispers changed direction. Elias had protected their cover by choosing the role publicly, and that choice now clung tighter than any courthouse signature. Near the balcony, the waiter slipped through a side door. Lucien watched him leave, then leaned close enough that his voice warmed Elias's ear. You convinced the room, he murmured. Now someone inside this house believes you are the fastest way to reach me. Before Elias could release his hand, every exterior gate slammed shut. A phone vibrated across the black marble table, its sharp buzz cutting through the muffled music beyond the study doors. Blue morning light pressed against the rain-streaked windows, turning the Moretti estate cold and colorless. Elias caught the device before it reached the edge. 17 missed calls waited on the screen. The first message came from his employer, effective immediately, your position has been terminated due to reputational concerns. The next contained a news photograph of his hand locked with Lucien's beneath the ballroom chandeliers. Headlines called him a criminal's willing consort. Former friends had filled his inbox with accusations, and someone had posted his home address. Then Elias called Noah. The line rang once before an automated voice announced that his number had been blocked. "Your father petitioned the trust administrator before sunrise," Lucien said from the doorway. His charcoal shirt carried the faint scent of smoke and cedar. "He used your association with me to revoke your authorization to contact Noah." Elias set the phone down carefully. "Can you reverse it?" "Yes." "Without frightening Noah or putting Moretti men near him?" Lucien's jaw tightened. "Not cleanly." "Then don't." Elias crossed the study, opened the unlocked door, and asked the nearest guard to bring him the City Hall documents. Lucien followed. "My security team can move you out of Black Harbor within the hour. I leave, my father controls the story. The person who switched those files controls what happens next. And you keep breathing. That is not enough anymore." In the library, warm lamps illuminated walnut shelves and dust drifting above a long table. The guard delivered a sealed evidence pouch containing copies of both municipal files. Elias pulled on cotton gloves and laid the pages beneath a brass reading light. Lucien remained across from him, silent rather than taking command. The correct witness sheet bore a small embossed Ward family seal. The marriage certificate did not. Yet both had been assigned the same intake code. Elias rubbed his thumb over the back of the cream paper. A shallow rectangular impression roughened the surface. "This was stored beneath another form," he said. He shaded the indentation with the side of a pencil. Numbers emerged, followed by a time stamp, 9:12 a.m., 43 minutes before Elias had entered City Hall. Lucien leaned closer, his cuff brushing the table. The blackout began at 10:11. So the certificate was prepared before the outage. Elias compared the clerk's receipt with the file log. The marriage document had been routed through a private records counter available only to authorized legal representatives. Someone had not seized an opportunity in the dark. Someone had scheduled it. Lucien placed a burner phone beside the papers. "My investigator can handle the rest." Elias slid the phone back. "Your investigator answers to your organization. Whoever arranged this knew your routes, knew Noah's contract, and knew I would sign to protect him." Rain tapped harder against the tall windows. Elias photographed the impressions, copied the intake code, and sealed the originals again. "Canceling the registration won't restore my job. It won't erase those photographs, and it won't give me Noah back." Lucien studied him beneath the amber lamp. "What are you asking for?" "Nothing." Elias pocketed the copy and met his gaze. "I'm telling you I'm not disappearing." He walked toward the library doors, no longer waiting for permission. "I'm going back to City Hall to find out who accessed that counter." Lucien's voice stopped him at the threshold. "That record can only be requested by a Moretti-authorized representative." Elias turned. The rain-dark room seemed to narrow around them. Lucien removed a signet ring from his finger and set it on the table with a hard metallic click. "Which means the person who chose you carries my authority." Rainwater streamed down City Hall's bronze doors, turning the engraved letters into wavering streaks beneath the white security lamps. Inside, the marble corridor smelled of wet wool and floor polish, while an old ventilation fan rattled above the darkened service counters. Elias slid Lucien's signet ring beneath the glass at the restricted records desk. "I need the authorization log attached to this seal." The night supervisor glanced at the ring, then at the two Moretti guards waiting beyond the metal detector. That request was already collected. She placed a carbon receipt on the counter. A familiar name occupied the signature line, Adrian Vale, Lucien's senior advisor, the man who had coordinated Moretti security for 11 years. Elias did not need another discovery. He needed the man who had arranged the trap to believe it had worked. Using the clerk's landline, he called the number printed beneath Vale's signature. The receiver felt cold against his palm. "I have the original certificate and the intake code," Elias said when Vale answered. Enough to prove the registration was engineered. Silence hummed through the wire. Then came a measured voice. "Mr. Ward, you were never supposed to become permanent. Neither was Lucien. Meet me beneath the east parking structure. Come without Moretti's men, and I will give you an annulment before midnight." Elias looked through the rain-streaked glass at Lucien's guards. "And Noah? Your authorization will be restored. Your former life can still be returned." 20 minutes later, tires hissed over flooded concrete beneath the municipal garage. Sodium lights cast bruised orange pools between the pillars, and cold rain blew through the open levels in fine needles. Elias stepped from the stairwell alone, though he had left Lucien's guards with instructions to remain inside City Hall for exactly 6 minutes. Vale waited beside a grey sedan, immaculate in a charcoal coat, holding a cream envelope between two gloved fingers. "Give me the copies," Vale said. "You walk away. Lucien leaves his estate to retrieve what you surrendered, and this unfortunate marriage ends." The envelope contained an unsigned annulment petition and a stamped directive restoring Elias's access to Noah. The paper trembled once in the wind before Elias folded it shut. "You requested the restricted form." Vale's mouth barely moved. "I selected a pressure point. Your presence forced Lucien into public exposure, just as intended. His convoy changed routes, but fear will bring him out eventually." A red recording light glowed beneath Elias's rain-darkened cuff. Vale saw it too late. Elias stepped backward and tossed the envelope onto the sedan's hood. "You chose the wrong pressure point." Vale reached inside his coat. Elias slammed the garage fire alarm. Bells erupted through the concrete levels, red strobes flashing against wet pillars as security shutters began descending over the exits. The Moretti guards charged from the stairwell, but Elias was already moving. He drove his shoulder into Vale's car door, trapping the advisor's arm before whatever he had reached for cleared the fabric. Vale twisted free and vanished down the emergency ramp seconds before the shutter struck the pavement with a metallic crash. Elias could have handed the recording to federal investigators and demanded protection, an annulment, and Noah's restored access. Instead, beneath the shriek of the alarm, he deleted the message he had drafted to the prosecutor and sent Lucien the audio file. His screen immediately filled with a secure incoming call. Elias answered while running into the rain. No voice came through, only glass breaking, a burst of static, and Lucien's strained breath. Then Vale spoke from somewhere beside him. "You should have taken my offer." The connection died. Elias stopped under the blue-white street lamps, water dripping from his jaw onto Lucien's ring in his palm. The guards demanded the estate address, but Elias closed his fingers around the seal and pointed toward their armored sedan. "Vale knows every Moretti protocol. We don't follow Lucien's security plan." The nearest guard stared at him. "Then whose plan do we follow?" Elias opened the rear door. "His husband's." The armored sedan's tires hissed across wet pavement as the Moretti estate emerged behind iron gates and banks of cold white floodlights. Elias expected gunfire. Instead, the gates opened, and a guard in the front seat muttered, "Council session." Inside the mansion, the air smelled of cigar smoke and rain-soaked wool. Voices carried through the marble corridor, sharp enough to cut through the steady ticking of an antique clock. Elias entered the council chamber behind the guards and found Lucien standing beneath a brass chandelier, alive and unrestrained, with 6 family captains seated around a black walnut table. Adrian Vale was gone. A dark bruise marked Lucien's temple, and broken glass glittered across one shoulder of his coat. Yet his spine remained straight. The call was staged to draw you here, Lucien said, looking directly at Elias. Vale escaped before they sealed the grounds. A gray-haired captain struck the table with his ring. Your husband has Moretti evidence on his phone. Hand him over until we know what he sent and to whom. Two men moved toward Elias. Lucien stepped between them without reaching for a weapon. Touch him, and you answer to me. The room stilled. Rain rattled against the tall windows. Somewhere in the hall, a radio crackled and fell silent. Another captain slid a document across the polished wood. The harbor crews will not accept Ward blood beside our books. Sign control of the eastern docks to the council, and we tolerate the marriage for 7 days. Refuse, and your captains withdraw tonight. Those docks moved nearly everything the Moretti organization owned. Elias could see it in the map pinned behind Lucien, the piers marked in red, the warehouses threaded together like arteries. Don't, Elias said. They want me outside your protection. I can leave under guard. Lucien turned, his cuff brushing Elias's knuckles. You came back when freedom was offered to you. His voice was low, but every chair heard it. I will not repay that by placing you in a cell. Elias held out the phone containing Vale's confession. Then use this. Make them listen. Lucien did not take it. He removed the heavy Moretti seal from his finger instead and pressed it into the wax beneath the council transfer. The scent of hot resin rose between them. The eastern docks pass to the council at midnight, he said. Every guard, route, and account attached to them goes as well. Elias Ward remains under my protection, with full authority as my legal spouse. Chairs scraped backward. One captain swore and walked out. Then another. Four guards near the door removed their Moretti pins and set them on the table, each metallic click stripping another layer from Lucien's power. No threat stopped them. No order called them back. By the time the doors closed, the harbor map belonged to men who no longer lowered their eyes before him. Lucien had lost the docks, half his captains, and the obedience that had once filled every room before he entered it. Elias took his hand, not for witnesses this time, but because Lucien's fingers had gone cold. Lucien looked down at their joined hands. I could have kept everything by surrendering you. You didn't. No, his thumb closed over Elias's wedding band. And now Vale knows exactly what I am willing to lose. A telephone rang in the empty corridor. One of the remaining guards answered, then returned with his face drained of color. The eastern docks have stopped reporting. Every camera went dark at midnight. Beyond the rain-streaked windows, the harbor lights vanished one row at a time. Lucien's sacrifice had protected Elias, but it had also handed Vale a kingdom without witnesses. Cold rain blew through the open corridor as the telephone slipped from the guard's hand and struck the marble with a hollow crack. A second guard rushed toward the council chamber, but Lucien's signet ring lay on the floor beside a severed black cord. Elias reached the courtyard in time to see taillights vanish beyond the iron gates. Lucien was gone. 20 minutes later, a secure tablet flickered to life on the dining table. Grainy harbor light revealed Lucien bound to a chair inside a shipping office, his white collar dark with rain. Adrian Vale stepped into frame. Behind him, cranes groaned above stacked containers, and foghorns rolled across the black water. Your marriage was never meant to kill Lucien, Vale said. It was meant to give him standing. Elias held the tablet steady. Standing for what? Vale placed a Ward maritime contract beneath the camera. Your father's company is selling human cargo through the eastern docks. Lucien knew the routes, but he couldn't freeze them without a legal connection to the Ward Trust. Your signature created one. The explanation landed with brutal simplicity. As Noah's authorized family representative at the time of registration, Elias had carried limited voting rights in the trust. Marriage had transferred emergency spousal standing to Lucien, allowing him to challenge any Ward transaction linked to Moretti property. Elias had not been selected by chance. He had been made into a legal weapon. Vale leaned closer. Withdraw the challenge before dawn, and your husband walks out. Lucien raised his head. A bruise shadowed one cheek, but his voice remained level. Don't give him anything. The feed cut to black. Elias turned to the remaining guards. None moved until he placed Lucien's signet ring beside his wedding band on the table. Open the Moretti legal vault. The senior guard hesitated. Only Mr. Moretti can authorize that. Then read the marriage certificate. Within minutes, Elias was signing emergency injunctions under Lucien's spousal authority. Printers rattled in the cold study, hot toner sharpened the air. He froze Ward Maritime's escrow accounts, suspended the harbor transaction, and transmitted the orders to federal port authorities. The action exposed his name to every prosecutor examining the trust and made returning to his former life impossible. Then he marked 3 containers identified in the contract and led the remaining guards toward the eastern docks. Sodium lights stained the rain orange. Diesel fumes hung between steel walls while Elias used the trust's override code to unlock the shipping office remotely. The Moretti guards entered from the pier, but Elias went through the record's entrance alone, drawing Vale's men away from Lucien. When the office door released with a metallic snap, Lucien drove his shoulder into his captor and overturned the chair. The guards surged in. Vale escaped through the container lanes, but his leverage disappeared the instant federal sirens sounded beyond the gates. Elias cut Lucien's restraints with a dock knife. Lucien's wrists were raw, his shirt icy beneath Elias's hands. You froze the assets, he said. All of them. Including the accounts tied to my family. Lucien stared at him as blue lights swept across the rain. You understood what that would cost. Elias pulled him upright. I understood what being your husband allowed me to stop. Across the harbor, agents opened the first container and began escorting frightened captives into warm vehicles. Lucien covered Elias's hand with his own, but headlights were already flooding the dock. A federal convoy sealed every exit, and an amplified voice ordered Lucien Moretti to surrender the ledger of his entire organization before sunrise, or be arrested with everyone who still carried his name. Fluorescent light trembled across the wet concrete while federal radios crackled over the fading harbor alarms. Inside a glass-walled command trailer, an assistant prosecutor placed a black evidence case on the steel table and turned its empty foam lining toward Lucien. The Moretti ledger goes in here before sunrise. Elias stood beside his husband, seawater cooling inside his shoes and diesel fumes clinging to his coat. Beyond the glass, medics wrapped the freed captives in silver blankets that flashed beneath rotating blue lights. Lucien's scraped wrists rested on the table. That ledger contains every payment, every captain, every judge my family bought for 30 years. Then it ends 30 years of protection, the prosecutor said. Surrender it, and we can dismantle the trafficking network. Refuse, and every Moretti asset remains frozen while both of you are charged with obstruction and conspiracy. The choice belonged to Lucien now. No gunman forced his hand. No counsel demanded a performance. Elias removed Lucien's signet ring and set it between them, its dark stone tapping the metal with a small, final sound. I used this to open your legal vault, Elias said. I won't use it to choose what survives. Lucien looked through the rain-streaked glass at the captives climbing into federal vans. Then he closed Elias's fingers around the ring. Keep it. He requested one secured phone. The surviving Moretti captains gathered outside the trailer, their coats dripping onto the pavement as Lucien called the estate. His voice remained level while he dictated the vault code and ordered the ledger delivered by federal escort. One captain tore off his insignia and dropped it into a puddle. Another turned his back. Lucien did not recall either man. 40 minutes later, an armored vehicle rolled beneath the floodlights. The ledger arrived wrapped in oilcloth, its leather cover smelling of dust and smoke. Lucien carried it himself. Every step across the trailer sounded against the steel floor. When he placed the book inside the evidence case, the prosecutor opened it to a page marked with Ward maritime transfers. Names, dates, container numbers, and Moretti authorizations filled the paper in black ink. The last doubt vanished with the turn of a page. The ledger connected the Ward Front Company to the same network Lucien had spent years profiting from without stopping. Full cooperation means forfeiture, the prosecutor said. Homes, companies, accounts, political protection. You'll both enter federal custody tonight while we determine charges and protective status. Elias took the cooperation agreement before Lucien could answer. Signing would extinguish his remaining claim in the Ward Trust and expose every decision he had made using spousal authority. The pen felt cold and ridged against his fingers. He signed first. Lucien watched the ink settle, then added his name directly beneath Elias's. Outside, agents began removing Moretti seals from the vehicles. The captains surrendered their weapons one by one, each metallic click stripping another piece from Lucien's empire. An agent fastened a temporary custody band around Elias's wrist. Lucien received one of his own. They were led toward separate black SUVs as dawn thinned the clouds above the eastern docks. At the dividing line between the vehicles, Lucien caught Elias's hand, their identical bands pressing together. When these doors open again, Lucien said quietly, I may have nothing left to offer you. An agent pulled the rear door wide. Elias held on until ordered to release him. Then whatever comes next won't be a transaction. The doors closed between them, and the convoy carried them away from the harbor in opposite directions, leaving one unanswered question behind. When the law finally released them, would they still choose the bond that had cost them everything? Rainwater slid down the courthouse windows, turning the late afternoon traffic into ribbons of red and gold. Somewhere beyond the security doors, a clerk stamped the final release order, and the sharp mechanical crack carried through the marble hall. Elias stood beneath the brass clock with no custody band on his wrist and no Ward name on the documents in his hand. The cooperation agreement had spared him prison, but his trust authority was gone. His family had severed every legal tie, and the balance printed on his bank statement would barely cover a month's rent. None of it explained why Lucien was 20 minutes late. Then the elevator chimed. Lucien stepped out alone, carrying a cardboard property box instead of commanding an escort. No tailored black coat concealed his plain charcoal suit. No Moretti captains followed him. The ledger had dismantled the trafficking network, cleared the captives' records, and brought indictments against the officials who had protected Ward Maritime. Adrian Vale had been arrested while attempting to cross the Canadian border. In exchange for Lucien's testimony and the surrender of every criminal asset named in the ledger, prosecutors had released him under years of federal supervision. The feared boss who had once owned half the eastern waterfront now possessed one watch, a rented apartment key, and the clothes he wore. Lucien stopped several feet from Elias. You came. Elias folded his release papers along their existing crease. You sound surprised. I spent months learning not to presume I still had a husband. Cold air breathed through the revolving doors, carrying wet asphalt and coffee from a cart outside. Lucien set down the box, then produced a sealed envelope. An annulment petition. The clerk said one signature would end it today. You would owe me nothing. Elias took the envelope. The paper felt thick and perfectly dry beneath his fingers. For 7 days that marriage had been camouflage, leverage, and finally a weapon they had turned against both their families. Keeping it now required something more difficult than sacrifice. It required an ordinary life neither man knew how to promise. Elias tore the petition cleanly in half. Lucien's breath stopped at the sound. "The first time, I signed where someone else told me," Elias said. "If my name goes beside yours again, I choose the document." He crossed to the civil counter and requested a new marriage license. Lucien did not move until Elias placed the form on the polished wood between them. "I have no estate," Lucien said. "No harbor. No men waiting outside. Good. I'm not marrying them. Federal supervision will decide where I work and when I travel. Then we'll learn the bus schedule." A rough, startled laugh escaped Lucien, small enough to belong to a man rather than a legend. He approached the counter, but Elias covered the signature line with his palm. "No contracts. No protection offered in exchange for obedience. If either of us stays, it will be because he keeps choosing to." Lucien removed his old Moretti signet ring and placed it inside the cardboard box. The metal clicked softly against the bare wood. "Then let me begin." He signed first. Elias signed second, watching the black ink settle into the fibers under warm amber lamps. The same night supervisor who had processed the switched documents checked both identifications twice, then witnessed their vows in a small municipal chamber smelling of floor wax and rain-damp wool. There were no guards, family captains, cameras, or inherited fortunes, only two plain silver bands purchased from the courthouse kiosk and Lucien's hands trembling as Elias slid one onto his finger. Outside, the rain had stopped. Tires whispered over shining pavement while evening bells rang 6 times above the city that had once feared Lucien Moretti. Elias took his husband's hand, and together they descended the courthouse steps with nothing left to trade and no one left to obey. The first signature had made them useful to each other, the second made them free.